Hey, so I just wanted to provide a review of the Renault Eurodrive short-term lease program, which is a lease program for tourists who are going to be in Europe for 3 weeks or longer, who can, instead of renting a car, lease a brand new car for, just a few weeks to a few months of time and get to choose their make, model, and have a brand new factory fresh French car delivered to their destination in Europe. My wife and I planned a trip in 2018, and I needed to find a car for us, whether it was a rental or the short-term lease. And we ended up deciding on the Renault program, and I wanted to just give some of the feedback about some of the positives and mostly some of the negatives, because there were definitely negatives. So, like I said, it was 2018. We booked the car in June, and we booked a Renault Clio RS 220 Trophy. And now that's, at the time, was kind of the hot hatch Renault, and I was really excited to have, a performance hatchback that would have lots of power and acceleration on the highways, but still be easy to maneuver in the cities and easy to park, most importantly. Obviously, as a bit of a car guy, having the choice of my make and model was the main draw towards the program. It was competitively priced with the rental, so it seemed like a no-brainer to book, a performance hatchback for not a lot more money than a rental car would have cost, where, who knows what I would have gotten. I don't have anything specifically against rental cars, but rental cars are the reason that my first ever experience driving on an unrestricted section of Autobahn was in a smart car. So I was definitely trying to avoid that happening again. So anyways, like I said, we booked it in June of 2018, paid in full up front because it was a little cheaper if you pay up front. And so 2 days before our pickup in September, we were still in Canada, and I get an email from Renault indicating that the make and model that we had selected, which was the Clio Trophy 220 RS Cup Trophy, whatever, I don't remember what they call it, but it had a long name, but it had 220 horsepower. That's what I was interested in. They were letting me know 2 days out that the car that I had selected wasn't going to be available for pickup, and they were going to be providing me with a rental car. But don't worry, we're going to try to get you the car that you selected in the first 20 days of your trip. My whole trip was only about a month, so they're saying I could be stuck with a rental car for 20 days, and that's if they managed to find one in 20 days, which wasn't even a guarantee. So I wrote them back pretty quickly saying that this isn't really an acceptable arrangement. Like, I did pay a bit of an extra premium to have that specific car because I wanted the performance edition, and it was a couple $100 more. But more importantly, the whole point of the program is that you get to book or select your preferred make and model for delivery at your destination. I booked it 3 months out. I don't think it's really reasonable that they could say, oh, it turns out we couldn't find the car that you selected. That's the whole program that you offer. So, like I said, I wrote them back pretty quickly and said, that's not really an acceptable outcome for me. And lo and behold, as soon as I voiced my displeasure, they magically happened to find a Renault Clio RS 220 Trophy that they were able to deliver to Brussels, which is where we needed it, on the day that we needed it. So fortunately that worked out, but I should have really kind of picked that up as a red flag to begin with. I kind of was being blindly optimistic and thought that everything was going to work out smoothly from there. They did also let me know that the paperwork that accompanies the car, that indicates the insurance information and everything like that, was going to be lagging behind the delivery of the car by a few days because they had to scramble the car on such short notice, even though they had 3 months of notice. And they would have to deliver it to our Airbnb in Brussels, which we ended up having to then wait around for several hours on the day we were leaving Brussels, which was kind of annoying as well, and just another downside of it. So anyways, our first few days of the car, I really loved it. It was everything I wanted it to be. It was comfortable, it was fast, it was easy to park, it was a great place to sit, it was a great car. So when we left Brussels, it was kind of a half-day driving towards the Schwarzwald region of Germany, towards Baden-Baden. And I noticed on the highway just 1 or 2 misfires that, I tried to justify in my head, thought, oh, maybe it was an imperfection in the road that just kind of felt like a misfire. I wanted everything to work out. And it was only once or twice I thought maybe it would go away, or maybe it was bad fuel. But the next day we were driving kind of clear across Germany, the misfires kind of started stacking up, and it was happening more and more frequently, especially when I tried to bury the throttle. If I was trying to accelerate with any kind of speed, the car was just bogging and hesitating and really sluggish, which is really unfortunate on the Autobahn. You're trying to overtake cars, trying to drive in the left lane, and you just don't have the power for it. And I mean, It's one thing if you're in an underpowered car, but in a car where you're expecting power and then you put the foot down and it doesn't materialize, it can be downright dangerous when you move out into that left lane and all of a sudden you're kind of a sitting duck there. So it became borderline undrivable by the time we got towards Austria. We basically ended up limping it to our Airbnb. And then we had to call the Eurodrive roadside assistance, and then there was a whole rigmarole of it trying to get it to a dealership, which was only 15K away, but we ended up breaking down on us on that 15K. We had to get a tow truck. I had to pay for a taxi ride. It was really kind of a nightmare of a day. And then by the time we actually got it to the dealership, it was basically end of day on a Friday. And if you've ever tried to get that kind of business done in Western Europe on a Friday, you know that that's your last day till Monday, because they don't really operate, that type of service over the weekend there. So with only, an hour till they closed, they were only able to do some preliminary checks on the car. They couldn't tell me for sure what the problem was and said we'd have to wait till Monday, which was no surprise to me. And we were scheduled to leave that part of Austria on Sunday, so we're already now staring down some pretty serious disruptions to our travel schedule. And I'll be the first to admit I was planning, a pretty tight schedule. We were covering a lot of ground, but that's part of the reason I went with a brand new vehicle. I thought, if there's anything that was going to be reliable, it'd be something new from the factory. But anyways, after tons of phone calls back and forth with Renault and the roadside assistance program, they managed to arrange a rental car for us. But it was about an hour's cab ride away. We were staying 45 minutes or so from Salzburg. It was an hour in the other direction towards a small town where we ended up getting dropped off on Saturday afternoon in what basically looked like a scrapyard parking lot where nobody was actually at the business because it was lunchtime and they had left, but they assured us that they had talked to them on the phone and they'd be back. So we sat in the sun for probably about 45 minutes in the parking lot of a scrapyard, just kind of hoping someone would materialize and rent us a car, I guess. So fortunately, the guy who worked there was really nice, and they had a pretty much brand new Volkswagen Polo for us to rent, which was awesome. So we got to use that for the rest of the weekend, at least kind of salvage our plans for that weekend. But we had this dark cloud looming over us of what's going to happen Monday with this Renault once it gets assessed at the dealership. So again, long story on Monday, lots of phone calls back and forth with Renault and the dealership and the rental car guy. And bear in mind, there's a language barrier pretty much the whole time. The Renault staff are predominantly French speaking with some English and some other languages. The mechanics and the rental car guy were only German speaking. Fortunately, I learned German growing up, so I was able to be a bit of an intermediary, but learning conversational German and learning auto mechanics German and car rental German is two very different things. So communication was pretty rough, and if you didn't speak any of those languages, you would have a lot more trouble yet. So basically, Renault finally diagnosed that it was a faulty coil pack that was causing the issue, but they couldn't get a new one. There wasn't one in Salzburg, they didn't have one in stock, and it was a unique coil pack from the regular run-of-the-mill Clios that they had on the lot, so they couldn't swap it with something that they had sitting there. So basically, they had diagnosed it, but they couldn't fix it, at least not in a few days, or not for a few days until they got the part. So that left us back to kind of square one with a broken down car and the Volkswagen. And so we were pretty frustrated, kind of feeling like we're out of options. But the Renault people said that it would be okay if we continued on our road trip with the Volkswagen, provided that we brought it back once the Renault was repaired, brought it back to Austria. And this gets down to the kind of the crux of the problem with the Eurodrive program. I mean, who plans an unexpected stopover in Austria, which is completely in the wrong direction? That was just an unacceptable solution to us, that we would just, continue on a trip, but then double back a few hundred kilometers, if we're lucky, in order to pick up this car, which we couldn't really trust anymore at this point. So they basically told us that we should continue on with the car, and after some negotiating, they said, don't bother bringing it back. When the car is repaired, we'll send somebody to drive it out and drop it off to you. So I called the rental car guy, basically just saying, hey, we're going to be taking your car on our trip and Renault's going to pay for it. And he didn't want us to do that. So we called Renault back and said, he says that we shouldn't do that. And they said, trust us, you should. We'll take care of him. Don't worry about him. Just take the car, go continue on your trip. So that's kind of the story of how we ended up taking a nice Austrian man's car on a road trip that he did not approve of and left it in Italy. And I don't even know to this day if he got his car back. I hope he did. He was a nice guy, and I hope he was paid handsomely for for the losses he incurred. But that's kind of the chaos that we came to expect in that program. It never seemed that well organized, and as soon as things went wrong, they kind of spiraled out of control. And so they did try to send a driver with our Renault to meet us in Croatia, and it was going to be quite a drive. We were well into Croatia by the time they had that thing repaired. And then we got an email saying that it broke down and left their driver stranded in Croatia somewhere as well. So not a great reliability report for Renaults either on that, if I'm honest. And when we dropped off the Volkswagen in Rome, they said that we were far from the first people who were Eurodrive program customers that were showing up in a different car than the one they originally set off in. So like I said, that's kind of the crux of the problem, is that if you're a tourist, you don't want to be tied to a specific vehicle and also any of the mechanical failings of that vehicle. You kind of want the fleet of a rental car agency that will provide you with a new car or a replacement car in the event you have trouble. I mean, you're on vacation. You don't want to be spending your time going into shops and dealing with delays and unexpected breakdowns and tow trucks and cab rides. You just want your car to work, and if it doesn't work, you want somebody to take it away and get you a new one. So unless you're going to be in Europe for, say 6 months to a year working, and you really just want like a brand new car that's yours, and if it spends a bit of time in the shop, so be it. If you're a tourist with any kind of, pre-planned travel itinerary, and like I said, fully admittedly, my itinerary was pretty tight, but I don't think it's reasonable to expect tourists to have just extra days and days to deal with car troubles, which they clearly expected me to have. I mean, telling me to go on with my trip and then double back to Austria to swap cars, that's just not a realistic expectation of customers. So I really can't recommend this program. I don't think the downsides are worth the upsides. The upsides being that you maybe save, a couple $100, if that, and you get to choose your make and model, but then you're stuck with that make and model, even if it's a complete lemon. It's just not worth it. I mean, better to pay for a rental car that, will be acceptable for you to drive. It might not be as exciting as the Clio Trophy RS 220, but you get a nice mid-size car or compact, and hopefully maybe a bit of a premium one, and you'll still enjoy driving it. And if it breaks down, you just get rid of it and get another one. So yeah, like I said, can't really recommend the Eurodrive program. If you had a different experience, I'd love to hear about it. Let me know in the comments. If you have any other questions, for sure put those in the comments as well. Otherwise, thanks for watching, and see you next time.